Welcome back to Just Blazor Programming, and today we're going to be dealing with MudBlazor again, except that I want to convert a Bootstrap project, let's say the Blazor, project template, whatever it was. I want to convert that into using MudBlazor's UI, the material UI that it brings, without bringing in all those components that you need in order to make it work. So this is possible. It is a bit of work, and it's also not going to work 100% of the time. You're not going to get all the features out of MudBlazor because you're not going to be using their components or their logic. You're just going to be using the UI that the MudBlazor library brings. So in this case, I'm just going to be working off the table so I can show you just how annoying it could be, I guess, but also that it's possible to do the conversion between Bootstrap and MudBlazor UI without adding components to it from MudBlazor. Although my caveat and my recommendation to all of you that if you are in this position, then you might want to look for other libraries that are much easier to implement. But if not, and if you're just starting out a project, I would recommend that you start out either with MudBlazor in mind or just stick to the Bootstrap project that you're working on, because doing this is kind of, it's a little bit more effort than it's expected to be, and honestly, it's probably not worth doing. But this is for science, and for anyone that's been caught up in this situation where you want a solution to converting your Bootstrap to MudBlazor, this will help you out. So let's get started. Just to help you guys follow along a little bit better, I'm going to start a brand new Blazor project. There's going to be nothing new in there. We will be adding MudBlazor into it, into our packages, but basically we're going to be starting from scratch. So please follow along if you can. So we're just going to go to Visual Studio 2022, create a new project. And we're not going to do a MudBlazor project. In fact, it doesn't matter if you use a Blazor server app or the Blazor WebAssembly. I'm just going to use a Blazor server app because it's just easier. MudBlazor, no components needed. Just to make sure that that you know that this is just going to be a normal project, I'm going to run it real quick once everything loads up. Perfect. So you can see this is just the normal MudBlazor. I mean, not the MudBlazor. This is the normal Bootstrap version of Blazor. So it's just a normal project starting out. Nothing new is here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add MudBlazor to our project. So in order to do that, go to dependencies. Oh yeah, yes, dependencies. Manage NuGet packages. And we're just going to install MudBlazor in here. So pick the one that has the highest download rate, basically. That's the most latest one. That has been installed. Give it a check. There it is. So now we have to go through the process of manually installing MudBlazor into our project. We have not done that yet. It's in our project in package form, but now we have to basically activate it in our project. So the first thing we're gonna do is go to imports. We're gonna add it there. So just MudBlazor, and we're good with that. I'm gonna go to the program, MudBlazor. Should be called MudBlazor services. And then down here, I want to add builder. You copy paste this here. Yeah, builder.services.add MudBlazor services. That's really all you need for here. The next thing you will want to add are the in the main layout. Here, the only, I know I said that we don't need to add components, but we do need to add the theme component for MudBlazor in order for this to work. So you just have to do that. So these are the three components you might need. In this case, we really only need the one for the Mud theme provider. But in case you're going to take this project further and work with other components that might interact with your dialog boxes, then you will need these two down here as well. For the moment, you really only want this one, but I added all three there just to have them, just in case. Sorry about that, my camera died, but I did miss one thing. We have to add a few of the dependencies to our layout page. So let's just do that. What we need to add here is the JS script for MudBlazor and the style for MudBlazor. I'm just gonna copy and paste it. These are all on the website in case you want to know where I'm getting like all this information from. So you can just copy paste it from there in the manual install portion of that website. So that is the link to the CSS. And now I want the min.js for MudBlazor as well. So I think that oh no, I missed one more. Yeah, it actually asks us to put 2 in there like this. So that is the font the MudBlazor chooses to use or something. So you'll see these 2 links in there that it'll ask you to put in. And then the mudblazor.js at the end of it here. So I think now we are good to go with implementing MudBlazor for, as I said before, we're going to work on the table here. So we want to convert this table from what it looks like in using Bootstrap to using MudBlazor. So in order to do that, you do a few things actually. So there's actually going to be a few classes we're going to have to add to it in order to make MudBlazor work more or less the same as it does when you're using the components, because the components are actually doing something in the background that you don't see when it comes to the CSS and HTML. It's creating things that you don't have to worry about, which is why I say that if you are going to go down the path of creating a project and using Material UI, you should use that off the bat. If you want to use MudBlazor, use the components off the bat instead of going it after the fact, because then you'll be stuck trying to figure out how to make all this work. So the first thing we want to do is add a div here for the main content. So in order to make this a little easier, I'm just going to make the div like this and leave the table out for now. So there's a few preliminary elements that we want to add here because this is how MudBlazor handles it in the end. If you don't believe me, look at any of their projects on their website or create the MudBlazor, the one that MudBlazor gives you, the MudBlazor template, and look at how they build out their, how the components build out the HTML. So I want that. The next thing you're going to want is one of these here. So make sure that you're always closing these divs off. So the main content is where the main table is going to go in. And then we want the container as well to house all that because that's how it creates it. So after that comes basically how it handles the, like if you look at the site, you'll see that the table kind of like hovers a little bit above the elements. So I don't know if we're going to be able to see it too well here, but we should be able to. Good. That's why we need this one that says mud table, mud xs table, mud table hover mud elevation -0. All these classes, these will have to go into their own divs as well. This will control the size of the table when you are in the container. And then now we need the container for the table itself. So yeah, this is why I'm telling you, if you ever stuck with this situation, try not to be. It's not very good. So now we have the actual mud table container. We're not done yet. We are not done yet. And finally, now we could move all the table stuff in there. So before we do the, copy paste this whole table stuff and put it in here, I'm first going to leave myself a little note. The end of the table. Sorry about that, guys. It's my keyboard. And then I'm also going to just push this all the way down here. So what we're going to do here is add all the mud table classes that we need to add into this table. So the first thing we're going to do is instead of this class being table, it's now going to use the mud table root. And this header will also have its own class as well. So the class it's going to have is going to be called mud table head. So if you're wondering how I came up with all of this, I basically looked in the inspector to see how it built it all out, because this is basically what you're doing with the CSS. The only difference is that you won't be using any of the logic that it supplies when it does the component stuff. So you're really just trying to reconfigure what MudBlazor is doing in the background from scratch into your UI. Again, I don't like this method of doing things, and if you're gonna go into this, you should really plan what you're making out. But in case that is not an option, well, enjoy the work that you're about to get into, because you're gonna do quite a bit of it. It's better than replacing all your components with MudBlazor stuff, but it's still quite a bit of just a lot of copy paste busywork kind of stuff. So here, your header, the th elements here, you have to add the scope of column and then like class of mud table cell, and then within that you could add your names to those columns with the classes mud button, root, mud table, sort label, date. So in this case, the only difference between this and like a normal MudBlazor component is the fact that you will not be able to sort them, because it requires other stuff to it, and I just don't think that it's worth adding into your table in this case. Now, another caveat of doing something like this is that depending on the component you're using, whether it's a table or grid or like a drop down or whatever, there are specific components with specific classes that you need to add. So I'm just going through adding all the ones that I want here. So I'm just gonna go to the end and just add the other two, since you kind of know what I'm doing. I'm just replacing them with these new modified THs with the span inside of them. I'm just gonna take this here. And that one, so I don't need. So now we still have the four labels, or the four columns that we're gonna base everything off of: the date, the temp, Celsius, Fahrenheit, and the summary. But they are all within their spans, and each span has each one of them has their own classes that you need in order to mimic the actual mud table look and feel. And again, the one thing that you're not gonna have access to is gonna be the way you sort them. So even though it might say it there, it's not gonna do anything because you're missing the actual sort like logic, let's say. So in this case, when we go to the T body, we're gonna add this class, mud table body, right there. And for each one of these, we're gonna basically do the same thing as up there. So you already saw what we did with the table row. We're gonna add it here, mud table row. That's another class we're gonna add. And then every one of these columns, we're gonna add another difference here. So in this case, we have a data label for date. We add a class called mud table cell, and then whatever it is that you're adding. So we're gonna do that for each and every one of them. So I already have the 3 prepared, but what you're just gonna have to do is add the classes and the attributes. But I already have it ready to go, so I'm just gonna copy paste it because you already know what you need to do on your end. And for you people with OCD out there, I'm sorry because probably driving you crazy. Try to make it a little bit neater. There we go. So that should that should be the right class for the row. Data label, mud table, mud cell. The names that we have up there are the same names here, and we kept the same information that we want to show up in the cells. I believe that is all we need to do. Oh, no, we don't. We need do one last thing. Is actually copy this whole table stuff that we worked down here so hard for and replace this with that. So just copy that, paste it here. And now, hopefully, you copied it correctly. I copied it correctly. And we're going to try it all out. And if there are any issues here, I'll let you know about them. And I'll figure it out really fast because I'm going to edit it. You know what I mean? You're never going to know the struggle that I will go through to debug these things. Excuse me. So this is what we want it to look like. So I don't know if you know what the other one looked like before, but it did not have the ability to do all this. The look and feel is different as well. And these should be buttons. So what would happen in with the normal MudBlazor component that was not stripped away, basically, you would be able to sort them. But here we don't have that functionality. We don't have the logic that's needed to do this. You're gonna have to do all that separately. This is all just to add the actual CSS look and feel. So if we went back and went over here, so this is the original way it looked like. And then I'll just run the other one because I believe I closed it. We'll do a compare and contrast this way. So here is the MudBlazor version. You see that it's actually able to do the relative sizing a little bit better than this one is. And it's also a little bit different too. So here the lines are different, everything's different. It's just using the normal Bootstrap CSS. In this case, we've implemented the MudBlazor CSS here. Now, the issue with doing it this way, as I've mentioned before, is that depending on the type of component you want to work on, this is a table, so you need table-specific classes for this to work. But if you're working with other stuff, like let's say the buttons, you need to use the actual MudBlazor classes for the buttons. Same thing with the drop-downs and all that stuff. And the only reliable way that I found to do this, because in the MudBlazor documentation is not very clear. You weren't meant to do this, first of all. This wasn't something you should be doing because it's not a very efficient way of developing your code. MudBlazor was meant to use your components and stuff in there. But there are a few ways of going around this. And the reason why I added these extra classes in there is because I saw that in my, when I was working on this, without some of these classes, it didn't really work too well. And it wasn't until I started adding like all the pieces needed that MudBlazor expects to have that it started working a little bit better. So that's why I say that you will probably need to add all these things in order to make your components work, at least up to the mud container. Everything after that is related to whatever component it is. In this case, we're using a table, so we needed all the table related classes in order to make it all work. As for the other ones, the same principle applies. So one way of looking through it is either building a MudBlazor prototype of your own and seeing the inspector in that, or going on the website because it has a lot of examples. If I went to the MudBlazor website and went to docs, these will show you all the component examples it has. So I'm using the table one. So this is kind of like how I got it working. Like, it's not going to be perfect because you obviously are missing a lot of the logic there. But if you go there, you go to inspect, you'll see exactly how I got it all. And that's basically what I'm trying to replace. So again, I don't like this way of doing things. I don't approve of doing this. But if you're in a bind and you need to do this for whatever reason, then at least you have a way forward. And you can do it. You can just replace your CSS, your classes and stuff like that using the material UI stuff that MudBlazor brings. However, MudBlazor implements its CSS and stuff by expecting other components to exist with other classes and stuff. from what I have seen. Could be wrong about that. And if you really, really just want to make your life hell, the other thing you can do is take these components and create your own CSS styles in CSS isolation or something. I would rather avoid going that far. But if you feel that you want to do some custom stuff, maybe you don't like this color here, you want to replace this palette with some other palette, go crazy, go have fun. Me, I want to make life as easy as possible. And if I were to make a project using Material UI for Blazor, I would just use MudBlazor's components and work with them from the get-go like that, instead of going back to my components and changing out all the CSS using their classes. So that is all there is today on this video. And I hope that this helps someone out there. I know this is a very niche way of dealing with things, and I keep reiterating that this is not a good way of dealing with this problem, but it is a way forward in case you do run into this situation. I do not like this, but hey, sometimes requirements come in, sometimes people come in that you got no choice but to be like, all right, well, I guess I gotta look into this now. And this is a solution, not a perfect solution, but it's something you can work with. Unless you just want to go and replace all your components with MudBlazor components, which I think is far harder. Anyways, that's all there is today. Thank you very much. Next tutorial will be out in a couple of days from now. And let me know if you have any likes, subscribe, comments, all that stuff. You know what I mean? Just keep on engagement. Keep the engagement up, I mean, and yeah, you know, next video will come out later. I got something else that's different in mind. It's not MudBlazor related, but who knows? If you like MudBlazor videos, let me know what you want to see, all that good stuff. Just Blazor out.